Hey guys, it's your boy Taj, back with another video. Let's go right into it. Boy, oh boy, was the Owl House season finale so emotional. Dude, it was nuts. Let's take a look back and see how these episodes did. So, the first episode of season 3 was very good at establishing the sort of transition from the demon realm to the human realm. We saw many different characters get character development throughout this episode. In particular, it mainly focused on Hunter, Luz, and Camila. Hunter actually had to fight his inner demons and differentiate himself from Caleb. And it was very difficult for him in the beginning, but then as the episode progresses, he gains a certain confidence to overcome his problems, even when possessed. And it's not until Flapjack sacrifices his life to save Hunter that he realizes that he has people that he can go to for support. And they can talk things out and allow him to de-stress and live a normal, happy life. In essence, this goes really well with his sort of character progression, because in the beginning he was very introverted and goal-oriented, but then he became more open-minded and more confident with who he was as a person. He wasn't just a clone or an experiment, he was a person with individual motives, ideas, and values that could be used to benefit other people. Now, Luz in this episode was hiding the fact that she went back in time and accidentally helped Philip, who got sucker punched in the face by Lilith. But yeah, she was kind of hiding the fact that she accidentally helped him gain the power in the past, which led to all the events in the future. But what Bellows was trying to do was get into her head to manipulate her to ensure that he can get through the portal faster. Camila had this emotional scene where she was being penalized by her principal that she was a troublemaker, and this was sort of like a connection to her daughter because she was also a troublemaker in school. So it helped establish her character as one that had good intentions. Even while raising her daughter, right? She had very similar problems, but she never, gave up when trying to do what she thought was right. Can I talk about Bellows for a minute? The guy, okay, first of all, he got destroyed by the Collector. He somehow survived. He's in this gelatinous, goopy form, and he's still alive and kicking, but he has to possess living things, which is pretty cool. He's really intimidating, but also he's just gone. He's delusional, he's paranoid, and he's hallucinating. In the second episode, we see him going and he's trying to possess a rotting Grimwalker, and I'm like, oh my god, that's disgusting, that's gross. You can see literally the fingers protruding. It's just not fun. I felt like the second episode was weaker compared to the season finale, and there's a reason for that I'm going to explain shortly. So what the episode was mainly about was it was setting up the final battle in the demon realm. The portal in the graveyard opened up and they went through. Luz and Camila had a heart-to-heart in the demon realm, and they settled their differences and made amends, which was very interesting. Even with the constraint episode length, they were able to focus on the main protagonists without sacrificing any time. My only issue with the episode is that they focused on Basha and Kikimora. Now, that could have been scrapped entirely. I know there had to be a conflict before the final battle, but I felt like it didn't really need to exist because these characters are like secondary characters. They have no meaning, no status, no one cares about them. They're just there for the sake of being there. I know people are fans of these characters in particular, and they enjoyed seeing them come into the fold in the second last episode. But if you're trying to conclude such a big like show that has so many loose ends, this wasn't the way to go. At least that's what I thought. Now, the Collector in this episode didn't really have a motive for doing what he was doing. Like, we didn't know the full extent of his backstory. And that happens in the finale. And I wish I knew his backstory before going into the finale, because it would have easily put us in the mindset of the character. I felt like the second last episode, it didn't really hit where it needed to hit. Like, entirely. Like, it was an okay episode, but it was like mediocre in a sense. So yeah, let's talk about the finale. I really like this episode in particular, and I don't want to go too much into detail, but I'll try to do what I can, I guess, in this scenario. We see so much in such a short amount of time that it's just ridiculous. It starts off with a dream sequence, and then, Luce, Ida, and King, they confront the Collector, and that is when we realize his motivation, which was he was falsely accused for taking the remaining Titans away. And apparently, the Collector, like, species name is called like the Archivists or something. So they are pretty much the equivalent of Brainiac from the DC comics. Like, Brainiac was this hive mind that just collected planets and put them in jars or something. Now, that's kind of different. The Collector is a victim that was falsely accused and put into like this seal of exile for hundreds of years, only to be released by a madman, forcing him to do whatever he wanted, which was the Day of Unity. That's pretty nuts. Now I feel bad, because there was a part of the video that I scrapped that had me like yelling, and I was really angry that the second last episode of the season was very boring. Like, I even made a joke about the Collector not being threatening.
I am inevitable.
No, you ain't!
But the Collector was never meant to be threatening. He was always forced in his situation. We see him from a vulnerable side. He doesn't understand the concept of morality and death. He doesn't understand how to communicate with people and form friendships and bonds and talk to people. Like, it's actually sad. So, not only that, he was isolated from people for so long that he's just forgotten how to interact as a whole. Yeah, it's just, in the end of the episode, he realizes that, like, after Luce sacrifices his life, that people can leave this world. Like, life isn't gonna stay the same forever. It's always gonna keep changing. And this idea of change was very new to him. And he says, like, I have to go back and, like, reflect and sort of reapproach what I know and improve myself. But the main sort of plot of this episode is Belos merges with the heart of the Titan with whatever goop is left, because Rain is pursuing him. And he merges with it. Luce dies, and then she meets the character we saw only briefly in the beginning of the second episode, and it happened to be King's dad, as many people predicted. I didn't expect him to be wearing like a bathrobe and having like a little hootie protrusion coming out of his eye. That was very strange. No one's talking about that, by the way. Why is there a protrusion that looks very similar to Hootie coming out of his eye? Is that like an Easter egg? Is Hootie just like a Titan parasite that just came to life one day? Did all the demons originate from the Titan's corpse as parasites? So he gives her powers to save the Boiling Isles, and it's a pretty awesome fight scene. because he was trying to like raise the arm. I guess that's what he did. So you gotta imagine, this guy's literally terraforming an entire island just nonchalantly, like, yeah, I'm just assimilated with a giant monster carcass. This is what I do for a living, right? It's pretty nuts. The Collector saves the people from the archives, and Belos is defeated. Now, even in his, like, dying moments, like, he is just so clever and, oh my goodness. There's just something about his attitude, how he's very nonchalant. It reminds me of Aizen from Bleach. I don't know why. I just thought of that. And I was also watching Bleach at the same time this was happening, so I guess I made that connection. Anyways, so he dies, Raiders of the Lost Ark style, where the boiling rain literally melts him into nothing. It's kind of fun, because like he's just putting on this facade that, hey, I'm Philip, I'm under this curse, thank you for saving me, you know, like in most campy shows, they'd probably do that, like, I was under a curse, I wasn't thinking normally. He's like, nah, this guy. The funniest scene happens, they go up to his corpse, like he's literally on the brink of death, and then they just stomp on his corpse. Like, I can't make this stuff up.
Get him up, let him get up, let him get up, let him get up. Fight back!
Like, King, Ida, and Rain just start stomping on his mangled corpse. Like, imagine, there's acid rain falling on this person, and his face is melted, his body is just congealed in this puddle, and they're just stomping the crap out of him. You know, it's nuts. I think, for the most part, the show concluded very nicely. I mean, there were a couple things that were left, you know, in the air, but most of like what was said in the epilogue and even in the time skip was enough to give a lot of people reassurance that the show is still capable of giving us that top tier content. I feel like I've been at the end of this long journey and everything is just falling into place, right? Like, it's just so wholesome, it's conclusive, it's what else do you need, right? But then there's this other part of me that's saying, well, we need a little bit more content to explain certain things. It's like, well, critically, if I had to evaluate the episodes in a number format, I'd say episode 1, 10 out of 10, episode 2, I would give it a 6 out of 10, and then the finale I'd give an 11 out of 10. I really felt they squeezed so much into this finale. One channel can't cover it all. Like, I'm not even joking. You'd need multiple videos to explain every single person in the show. Like, it's nuts. You know, the finale felt like I watched 4 seasons in one episode. You know, I was so happy, but also sad. It's a weird emotion to feel. Like, you're happy, but then you're sad it's over, but then you're glad that it ended conclusively and the sort of reputation in your mind is still upheld. I'm still riding that, like, dopamine rush from the finale. You know, it's still going. It's still going strong. It's not stopping anytime soon. If I had to give my final, like, remarks on the show, I'd say it's fluid, it's crisp, the voice acting is great, the animation is top tier, and the characters feel very relatable. They touch ground base with a lot of things that people may or may not relate to, and it has a very broad audience. The show has matured over the years, and much like many things, it did not disappoint me. I think that was my biggest fear going into the finale, thinking that it was not going to be that good, but, you know, I guess I misjudged it. It's always good to go in with low expectations, because then if they don't do well, then you're not going to be as disappointed, but when they do well, then you're probably going to be really happy. With all things being said, I feel like it wrapped up nicely in the end. So, yeah, they did what they could within those 3 episodes, because you gotta imagine, how can someone just end a show in 3 episodes? It's like a near impossible task, but somehow they pulled it off, which is just amazing. You know, making this sort of video really makes me feel happy that I was able to contribute to something bigger than myself, really, and sort of immerse myself within the fandom and give my opinion.